Everyone see? I think you can. So we're going to talk. So first, I just want to talk a minute about our work. So I think that we are a program that is highly aspirational and extremely pragmatic. And I think that you can walk both paths. And our bottom line responsibility is to stretch art as far as it'll go. And when we think we've gone pretty far, we should actually go further. And so over the years, it's almost like practicing in public because we're constantly testing ourselves and testing ideas and really centering the arts and artists in all we do. But we didn't start out as an art program. My background is I went to Stanford. I was a double major, political science and fine art. I was an artist who thought I'd go to law school. I moved down to LA. I had the great fortune to start doing murals there. And then I got really sick. I have lupus. I came back to Philly because it's near, I grew up around here. And when I started to get better, I read about an organization called the Anti-Graffiti Network. I applied, I got this job, and for 10 years, I worked with graffiti writers, and it was like the best thing that could happen to me, and I'm so glad I didn't go to law school. So Anti-Graffiti was set up because there was graffiti everywhere in Philly, and a former mayor, Wilson Goode, decided that the way to deal with it would be to work with graffiti writers to help clean up the city of Philadelphia. So they created this organization where there was this pledge where graffiti writers would come in and they'd swear, which wasn't true at all, that they would never write on walls for the rest of their lives. In exchange, then they had to do scrub time. And then I had just started my job. They didn't know what to do with an artist. My title was field representative. I didn't have a desk. That was odd. They gave me really bad paint and an undercover police car. When you beep the horn, the trunk flew open. Like everything was against me. But I met these graffiti writers who had endless talent and potential and genius, I would say. And my job was, according to my job description, to rechannel the negative energy of graffiti writing to something positive. And it was very vague what that was. So I started teaching workshops. And then I realized, I'd done murals for 5 years in LA and that I felt like, oh, I bet, all the young people I'm working with would enjoy doing murals. So I would show everyone pictures of murals in LA, San Francisco, Chicago. And eventually, like people were really interested in this. But there was one sticking point, and our mayor said that we could not use spray paint. So that was like a big negotiation with the young people I was meeting. And so I was like, look, you all are good at spray paint. I can't teach you anything about that. But what I can teach you is a lot of things about the arts. And so because we had a really big budget and most of the money went to hire young people, that was like a carrot. And so we started running programs and then employing young people to do public art in the city of Philadelphia. And suddenly, art became like a turning point and a lifeline for kids throughout Philly. And what started out as like a few young people ended up being, I worked at Anti-Graffiti from 85 to 98 when anti-graffiti shut down. And literally over those years, we worked with 25,000 young people, many of whom I'm still in touch with today because we were like a family. And when we started doing murals in the city, first people were like, we're not interested in art. We're interested in housing. We're interested in jobs. What could art mean? In fact, somebody said, Jane, the only visual stimulation we have in this neighborhood are billboards advertising alcohol and tobacco. Art is just not essential to us. It's distant. And so we would say, well, what would you like? And people said, well, that's odd because things are either done to us or not done. So we would say, what is it that you'd like? And so whatever we heard, we would put on walls. And it was, I mean, now it's like, okay, so we've got 4,400 murals in the city of Philadelphia, but we didn't back then. So it was sort of revolutionary that people who felt like living in the margins, out of the loop, not listened to by city government, could suddenly have their ideas taken into consideration about what they want on a 3-story wall. And what I saw in front of my eyes is that the art became catalytic, that it became a beacon, that it became a sign that things could change, that people cared, and that government could be effective. And we decided like early on, because I was like really, I didn't know anything. I was like so like, you know what I mean? I felt like an anthropologist learning about graffiti, but I hadn't lived in Philly very long. But I knew instinctively to listen to the community organizers in my office who said, Jane, when you go into neighborhoods, remember, you don't know very much. Ask questions. You don't have the answers. Do not make assumptions. Go in with the utmost respect. And I posit, because Mural Arts is such a thriving like program all these years later, that the movement of muralism has been so resilient because of the wide range of authors that it encompasses. And that started before we were even Mural Arts back in the day when we were the Anti-Graffiti Network. So there we have the Dr. J mural, which was this wall was graffitied, the lot was neglected, and it was like a reclamation of site. And that was really powerful, that these walls, these sites could actually belong to the community. And people felt like suddenly engaged and empowered, like they were like involved. And then we felt like, oh yeah, we have to be highly strategic. So we introduced ourselves to other city departments. We started bringing in other city services. We started bringing in like, like we would talk to commissioners from other departments. And my former boss was always going to me like, the streets commissioner said a group of artists reported something about the pothole or the broken traffic light. Is that you? And we're like, yes, that's us, because we felt like, okay, we're on a mission. And so we really learned right on the spot, but totally inspired by people in the community. And then what happened is then anti-graffiti closed down. And it closed down because my former boss passed away and there was a new mayor. And when there's a regime change, things change. So I was going to go to law school. And then thankfully, my brother, who's a lawyer, talked me out of it. He said, I don't think you want to go to law school. And this is after I got in. So I was like, what do you mean? So he said, you should go talk to the new mayor, Ed Rendell, who eventually became our governor. And he said, you should tell him you want to run an art program for the city. So I'm like, well, there isn't one. He said, tell him you want to start one. So I went to see him and I said, I'd like to start a community-based public art program based on our model in anti-graffiti. He said, well, far be it for me to talk you out of law school because he's a lawyer. And he said, but I think that's a good idea. So I was like, what? Because I thought he'd say no. So he said, where do you want to be? And we had researched it. And we wanted to be with the Department of Recreation because the head of recreation was very progressive, like a visionary activist organizer. So he said, fine, that's exactly where you can be. And come up with a name. So it was just a few of us because there had been many budget cuts at anti-graffiti. So we thought, what do we want? What's our name? And so we said Mural Arts Program. So we went back in and we said, we want to be the Mural Arts Program. And so he said, fine, that's what you'll be. And you're transferred over to the Department of Recreation. And suddenly we were like, oh my God, we're a pro art program. We're not anti anything. And it's like, yay. And there were 5 of us. And there was like, he said, oh, there's no space for you. So we're going to give you an empty floor. So I'm like, oh, artists love empty floors. So we had rickety furniture, this big floor, and we started talking to artists like, do you want to work with us? And then we started doing projects like all these programs at rec centers. And then we were like suddenly like just running like so fast going, okay, we're going to hire emerging and established artists. We're going to do art everywhere and we're going to be unstoppable. So one of our first projects was this, like 8 stories tall. It's just a beacon. It's still there today. And it's so beautiful. And it showed people because sometimes when we were the Anti-Graffiti Network, our biggest critics were the public art people. They're like, this is not public art. And I'm like, we're in public doing art. What are we doing? Like, what? That was so confounding. They said, you're doing social work. And they would say it like they had a lemon in their mouth. And I would say to the kids, hold your heads up. We're doing public art. But then when we were Mural Arts, it was like, oh, it's public art. I'm like, yes, of course it's public art. So anyway, here's our mission. And so we believe that art is a great impact on society, and that we believe in putting art to work on behalf of citizens everywhere. And for us, for me personally, this is not a job, it's a moral imperative. And it's been just an honor to do this work. And just a snapshot of like almost 60 full-time employees. We do about 143 projects a year. Our budget is 18 million, yikes. And just, 200, yeah, I love the fact that we're just busy bees employing tons of artists and 25,000 constituents. That's in all our different programmatic areas. We have a porch light program where we work with the Department of Behavioral Health, working with people struggling with a wide range of issues around mental health issues and trauma, restorative justice. We work in prison, the county jail, and with people coming home. Public art and civic engagement. We do big, complicated projects. I'm only showing some slides today, but we work with theater artists, writers, photographers. We're doing a big procession for 2026. Art education, we serve about 2,500 kids. And the Mural Arts Institute, where we're working with people from all over the country and the world. But under public art and civic engagement, we have our community murals, special projects, and we also have a restoration program. And so public art and civic engagement, I'm going to show you just a few examples of how we work. The freedom fighters. It's interesting because it's always like an investigation. This started out as a project about Cecil B. Moore, a civil rights leader in our city. We found that he inspired a generation of people called the Freedom Fighters. And so we interviewed them. This was during an election. We had voting kits. We involved young people. We tried to mine the project for everything it has to offer. We have a huge waiting list of people who want murals, so we've tapped into a real appetite for art. And that to me is so exciting. We work with a group out of Penn State called the Colored Conventions. They researched 18th and 19th century Black Philadelphia. The Colored Conventions were like forerunners of the NAACP. Again, it's like, I think that what the work does, it's about education, it's about advocacy, it's about inspiration, it's about sharing facts with people that, like, when you study history when you're young, so much is missed, but public art does not have to miss it. And it's a way of saying what happened explicitly and in public and with utmost respect. And then we did this Ben Fletcher project, and Ben Fletcher, unsung hero, labor or like first Black labor organizer along the ports. And again, and we worked with a group of this incredible group of activists and organizers and scholars who helped put together this project. And that's what I love too, because the mix of people involved is always fascinating. This is in a part of our city where there are a lot of people there from West Africa. And this is just a beautiful project. You can see it was done with such love and care. And then around the election this year, we had small murals everywhere about voting. And this is our first permanent mural around voting. And what I love is that this is a place where people are in recovery. And the person who heads the center said to me that people were so inspired by this mural that 50 people registered to vote. And I'm like, okay, art is inspiring everyone. So, and then we just did this project, and I just feel this one is so fascinating because every artist we work with has their own story and their own journey. And this artist, George Morton, had been in federal prison, and he learned to paint by studying the artist Henry Tanner, very, very famous Black artist, did not get his due. And when he came home, he got involved in the Tanner House in our city. And we had raised some money to do a mural that's a tribute to Tanner because he lived in Philadelphia, was connected with the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art. And I connected with George and I said, would you like to do this? And he agreed, and he went to the Metropolitan Museum. He painted from the original so that the colors would be very accurate. And then there was a fantastic team of people that worked on this. And then in art education, you can see it's a very robust group of kids from all over the city. Philadelphia is like other large cities where art is not often offered in school. They probably do a better job with music, but with visual arts, not so much. And so our goal is to try to make sure that as many young people as possible have art. I mean, when we worked at Anti-Graffiti, I could see like so much how art, it was like not just about painting of murals, but it was about learning design. It was about learning about equipment. It was about building scaffolding. It was about working with neighbors. We took young people to poetry readings, to films. Every week we went to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. We went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Museum of Modern Art. And it was so uplifting. And so I believe very strongly if we're going to offer young people and our vulnerable populations programs, they need to be excellent. Like, let's do our work with integrity and rigor. And so all the lessons we learned at Anti-Graffiti, we put into our art education programs. We also, so kids can come in at age 10 and stay to 18. And we have advanced programs, an internship program, an apprenticeship program, and an entrepreneurial program. And then we work out of the 250 artists we employ every year. Most of the artists are local. We're very loyal to Philly artists, but we also there's a small percentage of artists who are from out of town, which I think is great because we want an eclectic, interesting collection of public art. And I think our local artists learn from artists who are coming from other places, and there's always a great dialogue and exchange. This is Amy Sherald, who did Michelle Obama's portrait. She's amazing. And she was amazing to work with. And she took kids to her studio in Hoboken, so they got to meet curators and museum people and artists who look like them. And this is 8 stories tall, and it's a beacon. It's in our Center City area. We have one of the many sites we work at is for kids aging out of foster care. And so this is a young person from that program, and it was very meaningful, and it put her back in touch with her mom, this whole process. And so I love that it's in Center City. I think it has such power. This is a tribute to Tariq Trotter from The Roots, and this was created by Roberta Lugo, who is a great ceramic artist and painter, and he was a professor at Tyler, and so he brought the kids to Tyler. And I think that it's really important to put as much in kids' sight lines as possible. And so he thought, well, what he's doing with ceramics is like he's trying to do a remix of ceramics, getting away from just the Western tradition of working. And he saw the roots as genre breaking. And so he felt a kinship with Tariq Trotter, who happens to be on our board. So we were able to make that connection. And then the Porch Light program is very meaningful. It's our partnership with the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. So for Mural Arts, what happened in about 2004 and 5 is that so we started out with one mayor, an anti-graffiti, then another mayor, then a mayor who had a managing director named Estelle Richmond, who had been the health commissioner and head of social services. She took a liking to Mural Arts. And she called me in one day and she said, "What's your budget?" And it was very little. And she said, "I'm going to double your budget." I almost fainted, but that was, then when I woke up, I said, "Okay." And she said, "And I'm going to make you part of the Division of Social Services." And I went to the first meeting and I realized that in city government, you need three things to make the trains run. You need authority, creativity, and a budget. And if you have that, you can make things happen. It's like magic. And she said to all the commissioners of all these departments, big departments, budgets of $600 million, she said, "I believe in an integrated model of government, and I believe art should be part of how we do business." That sentence was life-changing for us. At that moment, we started working with Department of Human Services, Department of Behavioral Health, Department of Prisons, Department of Park and Rec, Department of Libraries. Like it was suddenly we were intensively like on the ground working in a very profound way. And the Department of Behavioral Health had a very visionary commissioner. And I remember Arthur Evans saying to me, he said, "Jane, we have a black box way of doing business. We send bureaucrats into neighborhoods and we say, 'Hi, we're from the city. We're here to help you.' And people go, 'We've received no services. We've received bad services. Sort of go away.'" And so he said, "So I want to take a chance with Mural Arts. People feel unsafe in our system. So we're going to do some big projects. We're going to have clinicians there, therapists, providers, and let's see what happens." And so we did several projects, one on a methadone clinic that was huge, that was great animosity with the community. We turned the basement into an artist studio, and people started saying to us, "I no longer feel like I am just judged or seen as an addict. I see myself as an artist." And the therapist running group therapy said, "Something is going on here." We got a little grant to work with this group from the Yale School of Medicine. They collected data. They said, "You're really onto something." We applied to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. We got a major grant, and that led us to create the Porch Light program. It's called Porch Light because we think a porch light is luminous, it's warm, it's welcoming, and that's what Porch Light is. We work with people struggling with substance use disorder, housing insecurity, great trauma. We're at provider agencies. We take over empty storefronts. We're working in a part of our city called Kensington that has been eaten away by the opioid crisis. And what we see is the brilliance and genius that it lies within people that has sadly gone unrecognized. And it is such inspiring work. And what it does is it shows to me repeatedly the power of art to create real and lasting change. And then this is one project we did. We got a lot of requests to do a major piece that really acknowledges the trans community. And so this has become like a landmark. This is in Kensington, where we worked with Ursula Rucker, an amazing spoken word artist, and an artist named Gaia. And we have poems written by citizens, both in English and Spanish. This is brand new in Northeast Philadelphia. This is Roberta Lugo again. We had a major grant to work with him, creating ceramic vessels in parts of our city that are so frayed in Kensington. And he's from Kensington, and it's called We Here. And that's part of what I think has the power of this work. We Here. It's like, that's right. We're here. We're not going anywhere. And the work that we're doing is going to take into account, is going to represent, is going to underscore, is going to talk about the people who are there. This is not work that is parachuted down from the sky, that is not done in careful, deliberate, respectful collaboration with the citizens who live there. And so we had a pottery mobile. We had all kinds of workshops. We had a symposium at the end. It was a brilliant project. And then in restorative justice, so many people are incarcerated in our country. It's changed some, but still not enough. And so we started working in the county jail. And then in 2002, we were invited by the art therapist to come out to the state prison, the fifth largest state prison in the country, thousands and thousands of people there. And when I went there, it was like, we don't really work with adults. And yet, when I walked into that room and saw the work, the men had their work up, I was so inspired. And the men said to me, our lives went dark at age 10. If only we'd had an anti-graffiti network or mural arts program, maybe we wouldn't be here. And so they wanted to do a mural in their auditorium, and we did that. And the mural, they didn't finish the mural. Like we were like, we have a deadline. And the mural, they kept changing the mural, changing the mural. Finally, I was like, I don't get what's going on here. Like, we have to finish the mural. And they were like, well, if we finish the mural, we're convinced you'll never come back. And I was like, oh boy. So I have a hard time saying no to anybody. Like anyone who knows me knows, like I always, yes, 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 yes. That's why I love ideas. And I probably have a staff that's very weary. But we decided to work there and we have never left. And so we have an art room. We do major projects around the city on parachute cloth. We do these murals. We roll them up, bring them out. And it's like a think tank out there. We bring in policy people, mayors. Next month, we're bringing out city council. I could not be prouder. We're just starting with juveniles in the county jail. We work in our youth study center. And then we have a program for people coming home. It's called the Guild and an advanced program called the Rec Crew. And because we believe in providing people with every opportunity and option possible for change. And you can see that we have a very low recidivism rate. The national recidivism rate is really high. It's like 65%. Ours is 10%. And it's like I can say, oh, mural arts is great. I don't really think, I mean, I'm like a very humble person. I think it's the power of art. I think it's about creating. I think when people are out in public space doing beautiful things and people come up to them and they say, oh my God, you've changed my neighborhood. This is incredible. The tape that runs in their head that says my life is a failure starts to change. And people start to believe in themselves because if we don't have that, then it's the streets, it is outside influence. They're too seductive because as a society, we never pay people enough, right? So it's like, okay, we're preparing people for a job where they're going to make minimum wage. No, we have to think out of the box about this. How do we prepare people for a leap? And art, while it's not a total solution, it is absolutely 100% catalytic. So, and then we do major pieces, we do small projects, we transform recreation centers. And here we work with Titus Kafour and Dwayne Betts. This is about reimagining the Declaration of Independence. And here we worked with Michelle Jones and Deb Willis because we have a program called Reimagining Reentry where we work with artists who've been impacted and they can pick someone else to work with. So here, Deb and Michelle picked 9 people who have been incarcerated. And their same 9 people are now living their lives to the fullest. And these 2 walls face each other. It's an underpass. And so there's one side and the other side, and then there's the viewer, and it's called point of triangulation. And the question is, can we forgive, or do we have stigma hanging over people's heads forever? And then we transform rec centers. So this wall was covered with graffiti and just like really like just blight. And it's beautiful. And look at this. It wraps around the entire center. This center was so bleak. Like sometimes I'm like, it takes my breath away how schools and rec centers look so prison-like. And I'm like, I cannot believe this is what we do with kids in our country. Let's change it. And the thing is, what kills me is that this is not extraordinarily expensive or complicated. We should just do it. It's like whenever I'm sitting in on conversations about art education, I'm like, are we seriously going to keep having this conversation about art education and how kids should have it? Let's say we're going to do it and make a commitment and then do it. And then our Mural Arts Institute, we're really proud of this because the truth is there are a lot of people interested in our model, but we decided to create an institute that's more of a knowledge exchange because we're learning from cities as they learn from us. So we have about 12 to 15 cities across the country we're working with and about 10 cities internationally we've worked with. We do trainings, we have teach-ins, we invite people here, and then we go to see other cities. And then we have major initiatives like Monument Lab that we did some years ago. And we worked with 20 artists like Karen Olivier. And I'm very grateful to Paul Farber and Ken Lum for inviting us in to this big citywide exhibition. So Karen Olivier wrapped a war memorial so that you see yourself instead of seeing the war memorial. And the idea with Monument Lab was we asked Philadelphians, what is an appropriate monument for the current city of Philadelphia? And then we just did this project. It's a tribute to Jill Scott. She went to Girls High, so this was very exciting. And finally, and then I'm going to stop and take questions. This is Float Lab. This is a floating laboratory performance art space. So during the day, this is designed by Mi-Jin Yoon, who's the Dean of Architecture at Cornell. During the day, it will be a space where young people will study the river, study environmental science, and at night, it will be a place where people can either meditate on the river or we will have different kinds of performance. There's nothing like it in the country. It is giant, it is beautiful, and we're very excited to be part of it. Around 2010, we started to think about muralism and like, what is muralism now? What is muralism in the 21st century? And we started thinking expansively beyond walls and that we could tap into the cultural community writ large and do work that was beautiful, that was awe-inspiring, and that had meaning and could lead to some change. And that's what's exciting. So when I think about our work, it's about impacting individuals, it's about impacting communities, and by extension, there is a giant impact on the civic life of the city of Philadelphia, as this is indeed an outdoor museum, but one with real resonance and meaning with people. We always say at Mural Arts that art ignites change. I believe that with all my heart because I've been a witness to it for 30 years. Thank you. So now I love questions and I like really hard questions too.
All right, Jay, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I should also note that if anybody wants to like visit Philadelphia and check out these murals, you also run like amazing tours.
Yes, we have tours. We have walking tours, trolley tours, and bike tours.
Okay, and if anybody wants to organize a group tour, I'd be happy to. I'm a great Philadelphia proponent, great mural arts proponent, so I'd be happy to help. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And
I'm also going to put my email in the chat in case people want to.
great. All right. Mural Arts run clubs, Mural Mile run clubs. Okay, fantastic. All right, so Chris Stapleton, you had a question.
Hi there. Sorry. Yeah, what keeps your energy so high? I love it. And what undermines that power? And how do you shield yourself? How do you reflect? How do you come up from that? You must deal with so much dealing. I mean, civic, wow.
So I've made it through, we've worked for 6 mayors. And so we have to look at that as an art form, like how you sort of do that analysis and figure out allies, obstacles, how you figure out like how you're going to get around the obstacles. So I'd say what keeps me going, it's the work itself. It's like yesterday going to a Martin Luther King Day of Service press conference and hearing young people interpret passages from a King's speech and then visually creating parts of it and creating a magnificent mural.
Wow.
And feeling that power and having young people sort of come up to me who I didn't know at the end and just saying, thank you, Miss Golden. This was so inspiring. And I'm like, well, you inspired me. Or going out to the prison and visiting or going to a community meeting or going to a dedication. I mean, it's like all of it is like, oh my goodness, this is so inspiring. But the obstacles are very real. Funding is like harder now than ever. It's hard to get money from national foundations. It gives me such agita. You never know about your city budget. It's up and down all the time, and all we can do is try to hold on, do really good work, make sure it counts, make sure that we're like evaluating, like understanding what the impact is, really trying to learn and do better all the time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, fantastic. Rob Hassler, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi, Jane. Thank you so much. Philadelphia native, huge fan of yours and the work Mural Arts does. So thanks for giving this talk. And yes, I work with Josh. So I just had a question around the notion of the absence of a mural that once existed. For a period of time, I lived in Brewery Town, and when I first moved there, my backyard had a Daryl McRae / cornbread tag. And as construction happened in that neighborhood, which is transforming, I always wondered what happened to that tag, right? Because in that moment, I knew it was there, but once it wasn't unless it was captured via photography or something like that. So just curious how you think about these murals and what happens when they no longer exist.
So first of all, I just want you to know we're doing a mural that's a tribute to Philly graffiti and cornbread's in it in the mural. So I just saw cornbread. I see cornbread often. It's like,
Love
here's
that.
cornbread again. So I think about it in several ways. One is that I understand rationally that murals cannot be with us forever. So I want the work to be powerful so that the memory of it makes people yearn for more. That said, I want to try to educate developers that they need to notify us when they tear down a mural or build in front of it. A mural is a civic asset. Like a few years ago, a mural went away in Point Breeze, and the community said, when we see something go away, we feel like our lives are being erased. So people feel a visceral connection to this work. And so I feel it's only right that people inform us, and then we can negotiate. Can you possibly keep it? We do a new one down the street? Can you contribute to this? What are the possibilities to think about this loss? Because it is a loss, and I always think, like, we aspire in Philly, we want to be a global city. So we need to think constantly about the role of art and support the arts, because it's like, it matters that we have a collection of 4,400, 500 works of art. And while we know that they will come and go, and some of our work is explicitly temporary versus others that are more permanent, I still think it's really, like, it matters. So I'm trying to work with City Council to think, can we introduce an amendment, something that's sort of common sense, that won't be punitive, but that really will help support the art and the artists. And then we also have to be vigilant about maintaining a funding stream that will allow for new work to be created. And now we're doing also a lot of smaller pieces. I didn't show this work today, but it's like risk capital, like, so there are pathways for young artists of color to come in and work in public space. So it's like, we have a fellowship program for Black and brown artists. We have an apprenticeship program. We have a fabulous internship program. And we try to keep all these pathways open for new work at the same time that we're really cognizant of that some of the work in our city can be precarious as our city changes and gentrifies.
I love it. Julia, you had a question.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. My question is if you have any advice or best practices on how individual artists or like me, art students, can create art that involves communities, especially the first step of reaching out to new communities. For example, right now I'm working on a research project, and I'm reaching out to people via things like neighborhood apps or Facebook groups. But I was wondering if you have any other advice. Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, one, I would go to our website, muralarts.org. That was first designed by Blue Cadet. And I would go, we have a research page with really interesting writings on community process. And so I would do that. You can also reach out to Mural Arts. We have several people on staff who are very happy to answer some questions and help people sort of get and what the first steps are to take. Wherever you live, I would see if there is a program like ours. What you want to do is just be really conscious of who is the community, what is it that they want, and how are you value added. What you don't want to do is go in and do something and then find out that it was a miss. So your ability to do good research and be curious, ask a lot of questions, find out as much as you can on the front end is absolutely invaluable.
Thank you
I
so
will
much.
also say we have a muralist training program, and we do a version on Zoom and then a version in person. So for people who are far away, we have figured out a way to accommodate that.
All right.
That's cool.
And you had a question. Wait. Okay, I'll ask.
Yes, hi. Oh, sorry.
Oh, there you
Sorry
are.
about that.
Okay.
Hi. Yeah, I actually live just south of Mural Arts, and I'm a big fan of what you all do. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, especially looking at art in public spaces and the ephemeralness, or lack thereof, of what you make. How do you and your teams strategize the documentation process of the work, and also like be a part of, obviously there's a whole process of it going up and being very public as you're making the thing, which is so unique about mural making, is that people walk by and see it evolve. So I'm curious how your teams sort of plan for that or talk about it.
Well, one thing is we document everything really well. We work with the public art archives. If you go to our website. Again, you go to the Public Art Archives, you can see the stories of like 1,000 different murals. We're building that. We hope it's several thousand within the next year. So good data, good documentation is really important. We have 3 mural books, and in a year we'll have a 4th book that's really about artists and social movements. And I think that's really important. So I think how do we, we've worked with videographers. Josh took the lead on curating a major exhibition we had at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art. So we try to think of different ways of telling that story. And murals happen how they happen. It's 5 different ways. One is through our mural application. And what I love is that someone once said mural arts is like the visualization of democracy, because anyone anywhere can have a work of public art. It's not like you can't. So anybody can apply. Now, funding limits us, right? But we are pretty tenacious, so we try to figure out how much we can do. So that's one way. 2, we do work connected to our different departments. 3, we leave space for artists to have ideas. 4, it could be a funder, it could be the city has an idea, and then we, 5th, keep our eye on important, like what is going on in our city that's of critical importance that we should be responding to. But then the other thing I want to say is when murals go away, and we know we've also had goodbye ceremonies, so that we can acknowledge the life of the mural and give the community and the artists a chance to say goodbye to it. And I think that's important because it's actually quite sentimental. And at the same time, behind the scenes, we're working really tirelessly to think if we can create it. But I want to say, like, we had a big win recently. There's a mural in West Philly. It was an image of Martin Luther King speaking on this corner in 1965 to 10,000 people. It was totally historic and it was this photograph that became a mural. So then there was a lot in front of it. The developer calls me and he goes, I'm going to build in front of the mural. I'm like, whoa, holy moly, like, yikes. So I'm like, you not only should be calling me, you better call the community. And then the minute I hung up, I called the state rep, I called city council, I called the community. And so we all organized, and then we're like, look, this, you've got to do something. You cannot just take this mural away. So to their credit, they built in a wall. So that mural, we just dedicated it a month ago, and there's that new Martin Luther King mural overlooking Lancaster Avenue, and that was a giant victory. And I'm telling you, that dedication was packed with people cheering. It was so important. And I am really a pest.
Awesome.
I am just a pest. So and I don't really, when people say no to me, I just go around them. It is like, I know it's probably not great, but it's what I do. So I go left, right, around, but I'm driven by the spirit of art.
Love it. So Jay, one of the questions I always have is, do you think there's something specific about Philadelphia that would like made it like fertile soil for this program, or do you think that this program could exist, in a similar capacity in other places?
Well, it was so unlikely that this ended up like that mural, that Philadelphia had this big mural movement, and people all over were like so surprised. But I think a couple things. One, mayors that were understanding and supportive of this. So it's not like we ever felt like we have felt fearful of budget cuts, but not budget elimination. That's a big difference. City council, generally, there's 17 of them, love mural arts. Why? We're very responsive to constituents. We're highly strategic, and we think about that a lot, right? What is the value to citizens? And so, Josh, I think it's a combination. So elected officials in our like being favorably inclined, and are being very sort of preemptive, and how we think about the issues in our city and what we need to do in order to, I want to say to stay alive, but that's not exactly it. It's more, how do we do really good work that has relevance? So it's both things, I think.
And it's interesting because I know you and I have had this conversation about, other mural programs that have existed in other cities that have been sort of more aesthetically driven, or like driven by development. I think a little bit about like Wynwood, where they have a lot of like mural projects, but there's like no bearing to the underlying community.
Right.
And so like, it kind of makes, it's kind of like almost like a branding, but there's no there, and I kind of wonder like if and I think one of the things that I find really compelling about mural arts is that like it really is very tied, to like an underlying narrative or like community identity. So like I just was one, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I actually think another thing that I didn't think about is that those 10 years at anti-graffiti, and I'm sorry, that's such a bad name, anti-graffiti, but we worked so closely with the community. And there were anti-graffiti had 12 community organizers and me and a few other artists. And I think it allowed us time and space to bond with community groups and neighbors. So Joshua, by the time we became Mural Arts, people really trusted us. And then we were able to take more visual risks. Um, but had they not had that foundation, it might have changed. It might have been different. So I think that we were able to, like when someone said you practiced in public, in a sense, that was correct because all those years that we were working away, really endlessly in communities, I think just sort of would let us, it bode, it made it bode well for our future work in public. Did that
It's
sort of answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And because I think what's so important about the work that you guys do is that it is really rooted in communities and it is rooted in social practice. It's not just
Right.
yeah, it's not just sort of an aesthetic it's not just beautifying.
Right. And even everyone like projects we do, like Michael Rakowitz did a project with the like a community of people from Iraq and then veterans here who fought in Iraq. And he did an 8-part radio series. We called it Public Art on the Public Airwaves. 'Cause that's what we thought about it. And then we did like a radio play like This American Life down at Independence Mall. But it was very, even though it was like he was a big artist and it was sort of, different, it was still rooted in communities. So I think sometimes it's geographically rooted, sometimes it's psychologically, spiritually, emotionally rooted, but there's a rootedness to it. It's never just sort of floating out there. And so I think like Roberto's project, like Roberto's showing at the Met, right? So he's like become very well known, but the fact that he's from Kensington, his studio is in Kensington, like that title we hear it just had such power. So I love the fact that no matter if we're working with an Amy Sherald, Roberto, or we're going to do a big project with Jesse Crimes, he's going to be doing quilt making with our guild program. There is a thread that connects here. So I like that we've been able to take risks, but we still do traditional murals and we're working with different artists, but we're really connected to Philly.
I love it. I love it. So if I wanted to start something similar, or if somebody, younger and more, have less going on than I did, I wanted to start like something like this in Santa Monica, for example, like how would they go about doing it? Or if you had it, like, yeah, what do you, what's the playbook?
Well, I would say the playbook is so what we like at the Mural Arts Institute, if people approach us as a team, like I always think it's really good to think about community, the artist, possibly philanthropy, and the city. So we were actually before COVID, we were in Santa Monica talking to them. So it's like, but you want to think of who's the village that can come together that would guarantee some kind of sustained impact. Because look, anybody can do a mural. You can go out, do a mural. But if the aspiration is greater, like what are you trying to do? So I think that's where the Mural Arts Institute or where Mural Arts can be helpful is sort of probing, like what's the goal? And then we have sort of a playbook that we've used, like that we think can guarantee some success in getting yourself rooted so that work can happen and happen beyond just that initial project. So we're really proud of work in other cities where now years later, long after we're gone, it continues in different ways. It's sort of like when we work in a neighborhood or when we do a project, like we're doing a big project now about suicide awareness. We did this mural about suicide awareness 10 years ago. Beautiful mural. We worked with people who tried to commit suicide, really hard project, and those who lost loved ones to suicide. We brought people together. We worked with a therapist who was quite wonderful. And a group bonded around this project. Now, after that mural went up, they did all kinds of work together, far apart from Mural Arts. Penn built in front of this mural. Now, when the developers called us, like it was like "Rah, alarm, alarm," and so we fought. We got $100,000, and now this new mural is going up. And I could see. I went to a site visit last week. I see how this community has been created. And that's what we like when we work in other cities too. Like we are happy to advise but really the goal is that we go and that the mayor's office, city council, whomever the power brokers are in that city have been able to see firsthand the impact that this work has in public space and that it means something and that that it will last. Like I love the fact in Detroit, like I think the mayor there's some allocation for new works of art. I like the fact that, Cleveland, Cincinnati, or wherever, like things are percolating. And so that for us is the end game.
I love it. I think that, we could probably do like a whole session on the restorative justice program. And like, I think that's like such an interesting program. And I think we'd went to Graterford together like a while back, I think before they moved facilities. But one of the things I think I remember you saying was that like a lot of the people that, were in that program, like they just they really needed an outlet. And in some ways, like these were not like dumb people or like not unmotivated people. In some ways, they were like almost like overly motivated people, and that just found poor expression. And I'd love to, hear a little bit more about that, or you share a little bit more
Yeah.
about that.
Thank you for that question. I mean, I find it really intriguing. I mean, I think that the big thing about going out to the state prison for me was that I remember very consciously confronting my own bias as I went out there. Like I felt like this is a scary place. This is now I work with kids all over the city, kids struggling in different ways, but this was a different thing. And yet when I talked to the men, it was this different experience, which shows that sort of that power of sort of talking one-on-one and then looking at their work and hearing their love of art. Like many of them had been studying art, looking at art magazines, reading about art, knew a lot about artists, and also felt a great sense of, I just want to make sure my computer doesn't die. They felt a sense of that they wanted to, that they felt a lot of remorse and that they knew that they wouldn't be forgiven, but they felt like that this through art, that was a way that they could make amends. And so I felt like I hadn't really thought about that. And so the work connected them to the greater world and it put them in touch with their families in a way that was liberating because they would say to their kids, like their kids would say to them, I saw a mural at Fifth and Dolphin and you did that. That's amazing. And so they would say, this could be your life. Like my life does not have to be your life. And it sort of had a power beyond anything that I ever thought. And like evidence of this is that some of the men have gotten out and I mean, they have gallery representation in New York. Suave Luis Gonzalez has won a Pulitzer Prize. He worked with Maria Hinojosa. I mean, somebody works at the Carnegie Institute. Another person is running the Greater for Archive project at Haverford College. Like I could just go on and on and on and on about the pathways. And so when I think about that work, the work out there or the work in the county or our reentry work, like to me, it's like this is work that just has to happen because it's like the evidence of success is profound. It's completely profound and unexpected. Like if you had asked me back then what I thought, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure that we'll be here in like a month. Like, because this is taking us far afield from our work, except it wasn't. When you think about, like sort of mass incarceration in neighborhoods throughout Philly and people who are missing and why are they missing? They're dead or they're in jail. I mean, it's like it seemed like a responsibility for us to think about this. And we did this big project called Healing Walls with crime victims and the men at Graterford Prison. That was a hard, difficult project that went on for 2 years. And when everyone could finally agree and work together and listen to each other? When they painted together, when they sat at a table and the power dynamic shifted because the people who knew how to paint were the men in the class, not the victims. And the crime victims would say, could you tell me how to use the brush? Could you show me how to use the blue? And then suddenly they started talking about, abuse they had had, loss, pain, and that people could understand what each other they were relating to, and that the victims advocates who worked on this, some of them left their jobs because they felt, especially the people on the parole board, they said, I've been involved in a life that has been punitive and I need to do something else. So it was very like sort of, it led to all kinds of changes. And now the work out at the prison is a work program. And so instead of making shoes or sweeping or doing something, whatever, in a prison, the men get paid to paint. And then we have art shows every year so they can actually make extra money from the sale of paintings. We just had a show at the public defender's office where all the work sold. Total
love it.
sell.
I love it. I love it.
Yay.
It's amazing. So, Jane, just to wrap it up here today, we have a sort of a community of people, on the call here today. There's, more people will be watching the videos. Like how would you like people to get involved? Like what would you like them to do?
So this is what I'd like. So it's sort of a call to action on a multi-pronged strategy. So one, if you're interested in working with us, like reach out to us for sure. If you're in different cities and you want information, possibly work with the Mural Arts Institute, that is absolutely 100% a possibility. If you want to come to Philadelphia and just learn more about it, take a tour, great. Wherever you are, if you want sort of like overt advice, that's great. If you want more passive advice, that's great too. But I would say to all of you who are interested in art and how it can impact the world, to try to bring about some change in your city by being either an advocate for it, be an advocate with government. Think about if you're in touch with philanthropy, like how are the ways that you could bring funding and opportunity to this kind of work wherever you live. So you could do it without us, and I think that's fantastic. And we are 100% happy to be a resource because, as Josh said, we have a great deal of interest in seeing this grow beyond the confines of the city of Philadelphia.
Oh, I love it. Well, Jane, thank you so much for being here today. This is really fantastic. I mean, it's always super, super inspiring. Your energy, your story, all the work that you're doing, all the work that you continue to do. So I'm incredibly grateful to you. Hope to see you again very soon. Thanks for everybody for joining. Jane, I'll let you sign it off.
Yeah, everyone, again, I think that art has an inherent power, and I just feel really honored to do this work and to see all of you on this call today. I am absolutely filled with gratitude and so grateful to you, Josh.
All right, absolutely. Thanks so much. Hope to see you all again soon.
Bye.